The story of humankind is one of survival. Long before the first cities, long before written words or tools of bronze, our ancestors lived at the mercy of the natural world. Africa was their cradle and their battlefield. Here, every dawn brought both opportunity and danger. Food was scarce, predators were many, and survival required not only strength but endurance, memory, and above all, unity. 1.5 million years ago, Homo erectus walked these lands. Taller and stronger than their predecessors, they carried the first sparks of innovation. They shaped hand axes from stone. They hunted with spears hardened in fire, and they carried flames from camp to camp, guarding the fragile embers as though they were living things. But even with fire and tools, they were not masters of their world. They were part of a chain of survival, prey as often as predator. On this day, the band faced one of their greatest challenges, a river swollen by recent rains. Its surface looked calm, brown water sliding slowly past. But beneath, danger lurked. Crocodiles, giants of their age, waited in silence. Some stretched over 5 meters in length, armored bodies sliding through the current like living shadows. To cross meant to risk death, yet the band had no choice. The land on the far side offered water, shelter, and herds of antelope. To stay where they were was to starve. The band numbered less than 20. Men, women, children, and one frail elder whose hands still shaped stone with unmatched skill. Their bodies were lean, adapted for the long runs of the hunt. Their faces bore heavy brows and broad noses, their limbs hairy and strong. Each wore hides draped over shoulders, patched and stitched with sinew, ragged but functional. The mothers clutched infants in slings tied across their torsos. Young ones clung to parents, eyes wide with fear as they stared at the river. At the center of the group burned their most precious possession, fire. It crackled in a shallow bowl of bark and clay, carried carefully by one of the older hunters. The flames sputtered in the wind, fed by dry grass and twigs. To lose it meant returning to darkness. To keep it meant warmth, protection, and the chance to roast food. Fire was more than survival. It was identity. They guarded it as fiercely as they guarded their children. The elder squatted near the bank, studying the flow. He motioned with his hands, slow steps, close together, weapons ready. The men hefted their spears, stone points glinting dully. A woman adjusted her sling, pulling her child higher on her chest. The group began to move. The first hunter stepped into the water. It was cold, the current tugging at his legs. He waded slowly, spear raised, eyes scanning. Behind him came the others, forming a line. The fire carrier held the bark bowl above his head, sparks drifting in the damp air. The children whimpered softly, clutching their mother's hides. For a moment, it seemed possible. The water rose to their thighs, then their waists. The far bank glimmered in the distance, a strip of safety. But then, ripples spread across the surface. A shape rolled just beneath the water, massive and silent. The hunters froze, every muscle taut. The crocodile struck like a storm. Water exploded upward as jaws clamped onto the leg of the second hunter. His scream tore the air, guttural and raw. He thrashed, spear plunging into the water, but the beast dragged him down, twisting in a death roll. Blood clouded the current. Panic surged through the group. Mothers lifted children higher, men jabbed spears into the water, shouting with guttural cries. The elder seized a burning branch from the fire bowl and thrust it down toward the thrashing water. Flames hissed in the spray, smoke curling as the beast recoiled. For a heartbeat, its armored back broke the surface, tail lashing, before it slid back into the depths, leaving only foam and red water. The hunter was gone. Silence fell except for the river's rush. The band huddled together, hearts pounding, eyes wide. But retreat was not an option. The far bank still called, and behind them lay only hunger. Slowly, they pressed forward again. This was the life of Homo erectus. Danger without warning, loss without mercy, and the need to keep moving despite it all. To live meant to endure. To endure meant to risk. The band pushed on, step by step. The fire carrier shielded the embers with his body, holding the bowl high even as the current rose to his chest. Children clung tighter, whimpering. Spears jabbed at shadows in the water. Every ripple sent a jolt of fear. A second crocodile surged forward, jaws snapping at a woman clutching her child. She stumbled, nearly falling. But another hunter rammed his spear down, the point striking hard. The beast recoiled, snarling, tail lashing. The woman staggered to the bank, dragging her child safe. The group screamed as one, a chorus of survival. At last, feet found shallows. One by one they stumbled onto the far bank, gasping, trembling, dripping with blood and river water. The elder collapsed to his knees, setting the fire down on dry earth. The flames still burned. Against all odds, they had carried it across. But survival was not just in crossing. It was in remembering. Each child who saw the river's fury learned its lesson. Each scar left by claws and teeth became a story. Firelight would carry those stories into the night, shadows dancing as elders mimed the thrash of crocodiles, the thrust of spears. Memory became teaching. Teaching became survival. Life for Homo erectus was always lived on the edge. Rivers held crocodiles, grasslands held lions, skies brought storms, and yet they endured. They hunted antelope with endurance, chasing them to collapse. They cracked bones for marrow, roasted roots, and shared every bite. They cared for the wounded, tended embers, and raised their young not in solitude but in community. Their days were harsh, but their spirits carried something new. In their hands burned not just fire, but the first sparks of human destiny. The courage to cross the Crocodile River was the same courage that would one day cross oceans, mountains, and time itself. This was life, 1.6 million years ago. Brutal, short, yet filled with moments of triumph. Each step forward was a victory. Each fire carried across water was a promise that humankind would not only survive, but rise. The far bank was won, but it was not victory without scars. 2 hunters had been lost to the river, their cries still echoing in the minds of those who lived. The band sat in silence around the fire, bodies trembling, wounds cleaned with clay and leaves. The mothers held their children tight, rocking them, whispering low, guttural sounds of comfort. The elder stared into the flames, his hands blackened with soot, his face drawn with grief but also with pride. The fire still lived. That alone meant the tribe still lived. Mourning was not as we know it today. There were no words of remembrance, no burial rites. But grief was shared in gesture and silence. Hunters placed spears upright in the ground near the fire, their points dark with blood. Women traced the shapes of jaws in the dust, warning children to remember. The youngest, though too small to understand, would carry the memory forward through the gestures of their mothers. Loss became story. Story became teaching. And teaching meant survival. By dawn, hunger returned. Survival did not wait for sorrow. The hunters rose, their bodies still aching and prepared for the chase. Long spears of wood, hardened in flame, were carried once more. Stone hand axes hung at their sides. They moved out across the savannah, their eyes searching for herds. This was the world of persistence hunting, where speed mattered less than endurance. Homo erectus could not outrun an antelope in a sprint, but they could chase it for hours, driving it to exhaustion beneath the relentless African sun. Their long legs, their sweat-cooled bodies, gave them an edge that no predator shared. The women, too, took their place in survival. They scattered across the grasslands searching for roots, nuts, berries, and insects. Their hands dug into the earth with sharpened sticks, their eyes sharp to distinguish what nourished from what poisoned. Children followed, mimicking the motions. A boy pounded stones together, copying the rhythm of tool-making. A girl picked up a stick and waved it like a torch, pretending to ward off invisible predators. Even in play, there was preparation. Childhood was not idle. It was apprenticeship in survival. The hunt stretched long into the afternoon. Sweat poured, dust clung to skin, and the prey faltered. At last, the antelope stumbled, its flanks heaving. Spears struck. Blood steamed in the hot air. The hunters shouted in triumph, guttural cries echoing across the plains. They cut the meat with hand axes, split the bones for marrow, and carried their prize back to camp. That night, meat sizzled over the fire, juices dripping into the flames. The band circled close, their faces glowing orange in the light. The children gnawed on softened scraps, their eyes wide. The elder took a piece of marrow bone and cracked it open, handing the rich, fatty core to a young boy. Nutrition fed growing bodies and, more importantly, growing brains. Fire had changed not only how they lived, but who they were becoming. But predators never ceased. Hyenas gathered at the edge of the firelight, their laughter echoing in the dark. The band tightened, firebrands lifted, spears braced. Sparks rose like insects into the night sky. The hyenas circled, snarling, then retreated, unwilling to breach the wall of flame. Still, sleep came only in fragments. The roar of a lion shook the night, and every heart pounded in fear until silence returned. This was daily life for Homo erectus, to endure one danger only to face another. The river tested them. The hunt tested them. The predators tested them. And yet, again and again, they endured. From a modern lens, their lives seem unbearably harsh, but it was in these crucibles that humanity was forged. The body of Homo erectus was a marvel of adaptation. Their long legs carried them vast distances. Their hands shaped tools with precision, flaking stone into sharp edges. Their brains were larger than those of earlier hominids, fueled by the nutrients unlocked by cooking. Their fires brought not only warmth, but possibility. Around its glow, cooperation deepened, memory was shared, and perhaps the first embers of language flickered in guttural sounds and gestures. The Crocodile River was not just a place of danger, it was a place of transformation. By daring to cross, the band proved more than endurance. They proved foresight, courage, and the beginnings of culture. The lost hunters were mourned not only in silence, but in memory. Every future crossing would carry their shadows. Every story told in firelight would sharpen the awareness of the next generation. As weeks passed, the band moved further from the river. New camps rose and fell. New hunts succeeded and failed. But always the fire was carried, embers glowing in bark and clay, nurtured like a newborn. Without it, nights belonged to predators. With it, nights belonged to them. Fire was no longer simply borrowed from lightning. It was mastered, shaped, and carried across land and water. It became the defining tool of survival. Imagine now, standing there with them. The African sky spreads wide, stars sharp against the black. Hyenas howl, lions stalk, and crocodiles drift silently in the rivers. Yet here, around a small flame, a circle of Homo erectus huddles together. Children laugh as they taste cooked marrow. Women whisper gestures of warning. Hunters sharpen their spears by the firelight. Fear is never absent, but unity is always stronger. This was life 1.6 million years ago. A world of predators and storms, of blood and fire, of danger at every step. And yet, through their courage our ancestors endured. They crossed rivers where crocodiles ruled. They carried fire through storm and flood. They hunted with persistence, gathered with care, raised children in the harshest of lands. Their story was not one of comfort, but of survival. And in that survival lay the foundation of everything to come. Every ember saved, every river crossed, every child carried on a mother's back pushed humanity forward. When the band stood on the far bank of the Crocodile River, bloodied but alive, they carried more than fire. They carried the first great leap toward what we would become. because survival is never only about the present, it is about the promise of tomorrow. And Homo erectus, fragile yet fierce, carried that promise across the Crocodile River into the endless story of humankind.